The main items for tonight. Item 7, planning presentation of Signal Park. You'll find this in Appendix A, those of you that are following at home or online. So I just want to go through the process to make sure everyone is very clear of what we can, can't do, who can say what, who can't say what. So I've asked for this presentation for our members, our committee members, so that they're aware of the development and what's happening. The process will be as follows. So Toby on my right will introduce the planning item and the planning team that have come here today. After the presentation, I'm going to ask members of the public who want to ask any comments, or make any comments, to please put your hands up. So we will make sure that we've got a note of everybody that wants to ask a question. If you don't have your name down, you won't be able to ask a question because we really do need to keep things tight. So please, if you want to ask a question, put your hand up and Kevin will make a note and we'll make sure that everybody gets their opportunity. Please do not ask what somebody else has asked. Please do not say what somebody else has said. All the comments and the questions will be gathered together by Toby. They will be taken to the planning committee when we formally have it, which we haven't got a date for yet. So just to be clear, this is a presentation for members of the public and members of the committee, but this is not the planning consultation. This is not the planning meeting. This is your opportunity to ask your questions to the planning team. So once the members of the public have asked their questions, I will then ask members on the committee to ask their questions and to make any comments. And at the end, Toby will sum up everything. And I think that's it. That's it, yes. We have got two people that have formally already asked to speak, Gerald Manley and Mrs Walker, and then anyone else, as I say, will take note of that as we move forward. And Kevin's got another 3 people as well, so we'll make sure that the 5 of you go first and then anyone else afterwards. So having said all of that, please can I hand over to Toby. Thank you.
Hello, thank you, Chair. Hello, my name is Toby Feltham, and with me is Carmelina Hickey. Just a clarification on the committee report. There's a slight error there. Paragraph 8 should say 879 square metres is for Class E flexible employment floor space. This is in addition to the 123 square metres of flexible community space, Class F1 and F2, which will replace the current marketing suite, which is already there as part of the 211-unit residential scheme development. So this proposal is for a hybrid planning application, so part of it is detailed, and that's for 336 residential units and 873 square metres of commercial, retail and service space arranged in 4 blocks in buildings up to 16 stories high, together with access, car and cycle parking, plant rooms, associated landscaping. And then another part of it, which is the area to the west, is in outline, and all matters are reserved except access, and that's for a mixed-use development comprising buildings up to 96.3 metres in height, and up to 64,389 square metres of residential, and that would be up to a maximum of 629 residential units. In addition to that, there's a new public realm, landscaping and parking. As Councillor Grocott said, I'll be making notes of points as we go along, and I'll summarise that at the end. Just to introduce the applicants, we've got Malcolm Wood, Christine Coe, Hannah Rogers.
Actually going to ask you guys to stand up.
I'm going to get them to do that.
And introduce yourselves as well. That might be better, Toby, otherwise people won't know who's who.
Okay, so do you want me to introduce them, or yeah?
I think they can introduce themselves.
Fine, okay. I'll let them, I'll hand over to Councillor.
Otherwise we're just going to hear names and we won't know whose name belongs to which person.
Fine, okay. Thank you.
Thank you. So do you want to come up and introduce yourselves one by one? Thank you. And then whoever's going to speak. You have to speak into the mic, otherwise we won't be able to hear you.
It might be helpful I actually explain who people are and what both parties do within the presentation.
Great. Okay, so while you're getting the slideshow ready, I'm sure you've all got loud voices. Do you guys want to just stand up and introduce yourselves so everyone knows who you are?
Excuse me, Chair, if I could ask the lady to repeat her name.
Carrie, thank you. Ian Patterson from Guinness. Well, I'm actually saying their names afterwards, so if you listen to me, you'll be able to hear what I'm saying.
And I'm from Countryside Partnerships.
And the other lady is Hannah Roger, who's from Countryside.
Guinness.
Sorry, Guinness.
That's all right.
We've got our notes wrong. Okay, so Christina, over to you.
Thank you, Councillor Grocott. So firstly, welcome and thanks for those who have come to see our proposals for Phase 2 at Signal Park. We have about 15 minutes to present, I'm told, so I'll focus on the key principles of our proposals with Q&A at the end. So who is the applicant and why does it matter? So as mentioned, I'm Christina Coe and I'm joined by my colleague Malcolm Wood. We work for a company called Countryside Partnerships, who are primarily a specialist in building and delivering sustainable and quality housing on large regeneration schemes. You may be aware, apologies, of our involvement with Cambridge Road Estate in Norbiton, which will eventually deliver around 2,170 homes for the borough. Our role in this application is to bring our experience of delivering high quality design and placemaking. Separately, we also have representatives from Guinness Partnerships here today, Hannah sitting next to me and Ian behind me. They are one of the largest housing associations in the UK and they specialise in delivering affordable housing. They've already delivered Phase 1 at Signal Park and will primarily be responsible for estate management for the scheme once it's developed. Both Countryside and Guinness came together in early 2023 to design a revised planning application for Phase 2, bringing together the skills and track record of both partners to deliver a vibrant new destination for Tolworth. So what am I going to talk about? I think the first thing is why are we here? The second thing is the revised master plan design and the detailed application, as Toby alludes to, consisting of 4 buildings, blocks Block E, H, G3 and G2, the stakeholder engagement that we've been through today, and fundamentally how it improves upon the previous permission. So why are we here then? So site context. Many of you will be fully aware of where the site is located, and so I'm not going to dwell on this. However, some key points to note. The site is a large brownfield site that has laid vacant for almost 20 years since the Ministry of Defence offices. The land has long been identified in Kingston's core strategy as a housing site within the Tolworth key area of change. The immediate neighbouring properties include the commercial operators on the other side of the railway line, Tolworth Station, the A3, Hookrise North properties, the Hookrise South properties at the south end of the site, Hollywood Bowl, Dean and Drayton Court, as well as the existing Phase 1 residents that have now moved in. Phase 1 has already been delivered, as I'm not sure if you can see that very well, but a large proportion of Signal Park Square has also been delivered, and Phase 1 is nearly fully occupied. As you can see, the site is constrained in terms of its boundaries, with levels of noise on both sides, and the site is a short walk from the Broadway, which has been fundamental to the design of the homes, the building orientation, and also the increased amenity provision and retail offer that you'll come to see in a second. So I think an obvious question is, why have we not built out the previous planning permission? So the previous permission lapsed in 2022. It was based on old building regulations and planning policy, meaning that the proposal is now outdated and not fit for purpose. It was designed before the tragedy of Grenfell and before the COVID pandemic. The previous proposal didn't have measures for 2 staircases in each block for buildings over 18 metres, 6 storeys, to allow for 2 means of escape. The previous proposal was also based on old ventilation, overheating, sustainability and electric car charging regulations. And the central landscape spine was interrupted by cars. This clearly presented a fantastic opportunity for Guinness to find a partner and effectively promote more landscaping, trees, design a less car-dominated route, to update to current building regulations and policy, providing a greener and more sustainable destination, to deliver wider benefits for the public, to attract people to the area, to revise the tenure mix and quantum of affordable and private homes to meet local housing need, and to revise the building positioning to respond better to existing noise and neighbouring uses. So, Signal Park so far. So, for those that know it, there's 211 affordable homes that have been delivered. It's nearly fully occupied. I'm told with only a few left to be occupied. It's got a beautiful landscape Signal Park Square next to the Tolworth Station. Phase 1 to date has contributed £2.5 million towards Tolworth roundabout improvements and a further £1 million towards improved local leisure facilities. It's also delivered the extended 281 bus route. So then, what are we providing? We're providing 226 more homes compared to the previous permission to help meet housing need. We have an increase of 130 additional affordable homes, including the introduction of 105 social rent homes. We're providing 190% more retail space than the previous permission, with 4 Class E spaces, a new community centre around Signal Park Square for local community groups, a much greener neighbourhood with increased site-wide carbon reduction from 35% to 68%. We designed it to current day fire requirements with all buildings to have 2 staircases in line with the Building Safety Act. A much more sustainable development that focuses on the outside spaces for residents and the public by providing approximately 270 new trees, landscaped areas and play spaces. We're providing an attractive design of buildings that reflect the local area's heritage through materials and colour palette. We'll be providing further Section 106 contributions and a seal contribution of £12 million towards infrastructure. The scheme has been landscape-led, with 54% increased in amenity provision. We've designed it with 3 distinct character areas, namely for different purposes: Signal Park Square, the Green Spine, and Tolworth Green. It's pedestrian and cyclist-led, with vehicles through the centre of the development being limited to emergency, refuse and servicing to improve the quality of the space as well as the quantity. The car parking is mainly being kept within the ground floor of the buildings, with only a few on street. The scheme provides 70% biodiversity net gain and 0.38 urban greening factor. So I've touched on some of the public amenities that it provides, but this slide is more helpful in showing the location of these spaces following some public consultation feedback. Namely, the blue area, which is located in the existing Phase 1 for the community centre to replace the marketing suite once it's not required anymore, right next to the estate management office. And the yellow areas for the Class E spaces situated closest to the station and by the Block E, which is by the Tolworth roundabout for reference. All retail spaces are intended to be delivered in the first phase. Separately to this, the development proposes a commitment for a financial contribution within the Section 106 to improve the existing pedestrian link from Hookrise South to King George playing fields, with some initial designs by our design team on public art or improved landscaping. The scheme delivers a variety of sustainability measures, Primarily, a new site-wide energy centre will be built within the first phase, which will accommodate all properties for the scheme, including changing the already built phase 1 energy strategy to a more sustainable one. There will be heat powered through air source heat pumps, PV panels to generate electricity, high performance glazing, low energy lighting, a fabric first approach to the design, biodiverse roof coverings where possible between the PV panels and air source heat pumps. The scheme aims to deliver mixed tenure across all phases to help meet local housing need across a 10-year programme. It provides 46% increase of the affordable homes from 285 to 415, introduction of 105 social rent homes with 83 being delivered in the first phase. At the moment, we're designing it with 3 phases, moving from right to left or north to west to minimise disruption and deliver character areas one at a time for the public to enjoy over the duration of the project. Comparing it against the previous permission, there's 1 less block overall, but buildings have got wider due to second stair requirements and taller to help meet the housing shortage. Even with this increase in building floor plate, we've managed to increase 54% more amenity space. The buildings along the A3 have been kept similar to the existing one tallest block at 10 stories. Height has been focused along the railway line to minimise impact of daylight and sunlight and not to compete with Tolworth Tower following public consultation comments. Buildings have been orientated to use building mass to protect against the noise along the A3. So some images of the detailed reserve matters blocks then, blocks E, H, G3 and G2. Block E, so for context, this is by the roundabout. Thank you. This block E is a diamond design to give it a unique shape and to allow 100% dual aspect homes with great views and inset balconies. It has a noise protected podium space at ground floor with interesting glass and brick infill design. To respond to consultation feedback, this was reduced from 20 to 16 stories. This is also Block E as it acts as the main gateway into the development with a walkway through between the Hollywood Bowl and Block E. We have key activation at ground floor anticipated with a gym studio or similar. Block H acts as a key landmark for Tolworth Station with a slender north elevation profile facing the station. No balconies along the southwest facade to avoid facing the commercial operators as requested through consultation, and chamfered corners to relate to the station building and open up views towards Signal Park Square. Block H has a high quality facade detailing with ground floor window frames, change of brick tonalities and horizontal banding. Blocks G3 and G2, each top floor is set back to encourage daylight and sunlight into the green spine and podiums, whilst creating an interesting skyline from afar. There are balconies on every facade except for the facade immediately facing the commercial operators to ensure all flats have access to a balcony and to encourage natural surveillance for public and private areas. The material palette chosen for these blocks is similar to phase 1 to ensure cohesion with this part of the master plan. So when did we consult? The team have held 2 main public consultation periods in mid-2023, early 2024, and a public information event to update the community on progress in late 2024. The feedback has been really helpful in coordinating our design principles, and hopefully this can be seen throughout the design. A few examples include the community space, which was moved from the south end of the site to the main square, where it will act as a central hub next to the estate management office. The building height and scale, the overall height was reduced with the tallest block originally being at 21 stories. The location of the tallest block was also moved from next to the station on the roundabout to the centre of the scheme alongside the railway line. In terms of congestion, to prevent it and ensure the public space became more usable, the scheme restricts resident vehicular accessibility through the main part of the site, except for refuse, emergency and servicing. The scheme also focuses on prioritising pedestrians and cyclists and using Zipcar, which is already doing very well on phase 1. In terms of maintenance, all design decisions have been made with Guinness's estate management team as part of the design process to ensure a sustainable and long-lasting scheme. Connectivity is the last point around here, which is to do with improvements to the existing walkway, which I've touched on, and proposed via a Section 106 contribution. So, summary then, to compare it to the previous permission. I mean, the figures speak for themselves. 46% increase in affordable homes, 105 social rent homes compared to the previous permission, which had 0. More amenity space in terms of quantity, but also quality. Beautiful landscaped areas for the public to use. 190% increase in retail provision. 0 north-facing single-aspect homes. A substantially greener destination with approximately 217 new trees, PV array, air source heat pumps, biodiversity net gain of 0.7. I hope you can see how we've sought to improve the previous permission, and we're really looking forward to hopefully getting on with delivering the rest of this fantastic master plan, which will eventually be a new and exciting destination in Tolworth for the public as well as new residents. I'll now hand over to Josh to field the Q&A. You probably want to come up here.
Thank you very much, Christina. So, as I said before, just to remind everybody, if you would like to speak, I'll just read out the 5 names that we've got so far. And then members of the public, if you'd like to speak, please raise your hands. Kevin will make sure that we've got a note and we include everyone. So, this is your opportunity to ask the planners any questions or make any comments. Then I will ask members of the committee, and then Toby will sum up at the end. Before I do that, I'm just going to invite Councillor Mercer to mention something that we didn't mention before.
I'd just like to declare that I'm a member of the Planning Committee, and therefore I won't be commenting on this application this evening.
Thank you very much. So, the people I've got who want to speak is Gerald Manley. Great, you're first. Bridget Walker. Thank you. Ruth McKinley. Yeah, thank you. Richard Waugh. Thank you. Mr. Rob. Thank you. And who else would like to speak? Gia, sorry. Sorry, Gia. We'd actually met the other day and I should know your name. Anyone else who would like to speak? Nobody else would like to make any comments or ask any questions? No, okay, and then I'll go to members of the committee. So if I can invite Gerald Manley first, please. Thank you. You come up, ask a question. Come up to the mic, ask. In fact, we might just turn Affy's mic round. Gerald, just come and use this mic rather than everybody having to move, otherwise it's going to be impossible.
Standing ovation. This is unusual. Right, thank you, everyone.
I'll come to you in a minute, Bridget.
Thank you.
I should put it on there.
It's yeah, all right.
Right, Gerald, ask a question. We need to move on.
Sorry. Okay, so hi there. I'm Jared Manley of First Plan, planning consultant, speaking tonight on behalf of our clients, the Day Group, London Concrete and London United Busways, First Group. They occupy the businesses at Tolworth Depot, located immediately to the south of Signal Park, across the railway. Our clients' businesses form part of a strategic rail freight site and operational bus depot. Their operations include, but are not limited to, a rail-served aggregates depot, a handling facility, a concrete batching plant, and a 24/7-hour bus maintenance, repair and bus storage facility. These... There we go. Oh, thank you. I'll just do it. These businesses directly contribute to house building, growth and sustainable transport infrastructure. Our clients, firstly, do not object to the principle of a neighbouring housing scheme here. However, it is very important that the amenity of Tolworth's incoming residents will be protected. Together with our clients, acoustic consultant, we have undertaken a detailed review of the submitted planning documents. At this stage, we conclude that the proposed design would fail to provide the new residents with comfortable, high-quality living conditions that they are expecting from a new residential property. The developer's proposal includes openable windows to habitable rooms which face directly onto the railway and to the Tolworth Depot. Private balconies are also on these facades.
Can I ask you to move on to your question, please?
I was told I could make a statement rather than a... question.
You can, but you've got 3 minutes and you've almost up.
Thank you. In addition, it's considered that there is an absence of noise mitigation needed to reduce the impact for the worst affected windows and balconies to an appropriate level. We also consider that Kingston officers need clarity on a number of technical items before they can assess this application properly. We consider that this impact and technical ambiguity will amount to material harm upon the day-to-day lives of Tolworth's newest residents. This risks giving rise to noise complaints, which would have a significant impact upon our clients' businesses if their activities were then constrained. Accordingly, in January of this year, we formally objected to the planning application at Signal Park. However, we are very keen to work with Kingston officers and the developers to ensure that living conditions for future residents are protected, as they have been up until this point. Collaboration could include our involvement on design revisions, suitable mitigation, clarity on technical documentation, and our input in the drafting of planning conditions and obligations attached to a planning permission. This is needed in order to make the development acceptable, but without it, we do sustain our objection. But yeah, very happy to work with you guys, and I know we've spoken recently. Keen to set up a meeting soon. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Gerald. I do apologise. I did forget to mention that everybody has 3 minutes. I'm sorry, I told you that halfway through.
That's okay.
So apologies for that. Thank you for your comments. So can I invite Miss Bridget Walker, please, Mrs. Bridget Walker. So you also have 3 minutes for any comments or any questions. Thank you. If you can just sit here, that would be great, Bridget. We'll move it down so it's better for you height-wise.
It's not right. We should be able to, it's a presentation, we should be able to do comments. I'm not sitting here to ask some questions. Anyway.
You can ask questions or you can make
I'm
comments.
reading a statement.
So you've got 3 minutes.
I know.
So you don't have to ask any questions, of course.
I can't sit and sit there. I don't want to stand up. I'd rather sit there.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much. Sorry to be a pain. Those of you who know me know that. Right. You can let me know at 2.5.
I will take you at 2.5.
Thank you.
Is it ready? Yes? Good evening. My name is Bridget Walker, 42 years living on the Yule Road. I married in 1970, was lucky enough to get a Guinness Trust flat in Chelsea, which enabled us to save for a house. So we're well aware of Guinness Trust. The developers say over 100% of Kingston's annual housing targets will be met on this site. Why should Tolworth residents be severely discriminated against? At the April 17 appeal, 705 units were refused. In 2019, 950 were granted. 10 years later, we're up to 1,176. This will give rise to a density figure relevant to central London areas with a tube station. But it won't stop there. From the planning statement, a minimum of 965. H, designed to provide separation to allow for further redevelopment in the future. E, provides sufficient to the Hollywood Bowl to allow future development. Developers get 3 years to start but never a finish date, surely a reason for a housing shortage. Developers seeking to maximise profit from increases in land values delay the build-out of sites. 6 years from approved and only 211 are completed. Where is our delayed new local plan? It could have helped us rebut quotas from the Mayor or the Government. No opportunity has had yet been agreed for Kingston. The core strategy quoted 600 homes for the whole of Tolworth, a figure exceeded long ago. What happened to retain the prevailing character of Tolworth's residential areas with their large areas of family houses with gardens? The approved application has nothing higher than 10. Now it's high-rise city. This is unacceptable. The draft building strategy, again disappeared, shows the majority of the site up to 12 stories and one up to 17. Yet this block plan, 214, 115, 116, 119, and a possible 27.5. I don't know where that's going. The Toby Jug, where David Bowie once played, now has a 15-storey block, akin to an ugly office. You've seen it already. Why should anyone live on the Tolworth roundabout or next to the railway line? We've heard why. Tolworth has suffered from everyone using Crossrail 2 as a reason for high density. 160s office block with crumbling concrete pillars from years of water ingress should not result in suburban Tolworth becoming a dense high-rise city. The reasons against are no Crossrail, no tube station, no additional trains, a little provider coach in perpetuity to take staff to Surbiton, yet they're next to Tolworth Station. No future planned levels of infrastructure to deal with increase in demand on overstretched drainage, sewerage, gas, electricity, etc. It's very harmful for residents to have cumulatively up to 2,000 flats and 5,000 extra people because you've got the Tolworth Tower 500 flats as well. Half a minute, right. Harmful and unacceptable dense, cramped living, lack of safe amenity, overlooking, lack of sunlight and daylight, harmful impact from traffic on the congested Tolworth roundabout, poor air quality, detrimental, people like us with asthma and COPD, harmful noise levels which no amount of mitigation can solve, unhealthy mechanical ventilation which could stop working if electricity fails, just think of Heathrow, not enough parking spaces for buildings near PTEL 1 to 3, and since COVID around here, more people work from home and the streets are full of cars. Only 35% affordable housing when 50% required. The zero carbon offset figure will not help reduce the extra pollution. Please support residents and ask planning to refuse it. The roads already suffer from damage from heavy construction lorries, and it will be horrendous if a tower is built on the roundabout. More people are suffering mental health issues, which will not be helped by building tower blocks.
If you can just wrap up, please.
And I would appreciate if Glynis Trust could get rid of the graffiti because it's causing antisocial behaviour. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Just a comment, because I think you said, please, can we disagree? We're not agreeing or disagreeing with any planning tonight, just to make it clear to everybody. Thank you. If I can ask Ruth McKinley to come up, please.
Chair, can I waive my right to speak because everything has actually already been mentioned?
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ruth. So Richard Waugh, please. Apologies, Richard Ware. I couldn't read your writing. Sorry, that's my fault. Sit wherever you feel most comfortable.
Richard Ware of the Chesington District Residents Association. So when I refer to the we, that is the we. We are very strongly of the opinion that there should be no additional flats added into this development, and do seriously consider a reduction to be more appropriate option. The statement by Sphere 25, who are the developer's planning consultant, from their report, both the Guinness Partnership and the council officers agree that the original permission could be improved in a number of ways. This includes an increase in the number of homes that could be delivered on the site. That statement has been made without any substantive explanation, and in our experience, it is an outright oxymoron, as you don't improve a dense development by making it even denser. No mention of occupiers' well-being were taken into account. In fact, the word is not even mentioned once in the whole of Sphere's 100-page plus planning policy, which is a bit of disappointment. More flats to us, amongst other things, means 1, less privacy, 2, more overlooking, 3, more overheating, 4, less internal light, 5, more overshadowing to not only the occupants of the flats, but 6, also to the surrounding residents, less on-site private and community amenity space, 8, less play space, with the risk of young children being unsupervised and probably at times unsafe in off-site local park environments instead of safeguarded on the site, and 9, more on-street parking. They've done the comparison and they say they've got more amenity space. Well, they haven't, because the one they were judging it against was the dumpy scheme, which not to exceed 10 stories, which literally, I can say, was not a goer because you literally had to turn sideways to walk between the blocks. There was so much mass hitting the ground. We feel the addition of 226 flats into the scheme, making a total of 1,176, really has rubbed salt into the wound in the way it was done. Extremely nasty and cowardly, using a 3-year planning period expiry. If you look at the time on the actual construction processes to date and who is responsible for them, and then you have the nerve to penalise the innocent local community, is an absolute disgrace. And as the tower blocks going up to 16, even 19 stories on an allegedly not to exceed 10-storey development, which appear to be totally ignored. If the detailed part of the scheme is to be built out and the outline section consigned to the dustbin, has happened with phase 1, do we have any assurances that the excuses for increasing the numbers in this phase 2A will not also occur
Could you please wrap up? Your 3 minutes are up.
on
Thank you.
phases 2B and 2C as well? The local community is getting very cynical, and who can blame them?
Thank you very much, Mr. Ware. And Mr. Rob.
I sat for 3 days on the appeal against the 705, which we won, and we walked the Sunray estate with the inspector, and one of the big fears and one reason we won the thing was the overspill parking, because the number of parking spaces are totally inadequate. The other thing is, I grew up in the 1960s, and we're now building the new version of the 1960s tower blocks, and they don't work. They cause problems, both socially and other. Secondly, as you come down the A3, the blocks they built already show you this is totally incongruous with the surroundings. You know, they shouldn't go any higher, and it's over densification. And one thing that really concerns me with Heathrow happened the other day is that if you look about 60 kilowatt for each apartment, they're going to need a terrific influx of power to this site. I think like 60,000 kilowatts, and that's just not just for the apartments, but there'll be services that need extra power. There'll be EV charging points that need extra power, and are they putting a substation in that's big enough to cope with the whole overall development and not do it piecemeal? What's the last thing I was going to say? Yeah, just totally, the whole thing, it's to do with the mayor and saying, because there's a station there, that he can now use these densification plans. But our trains only go to Waterloo, they don't go anywhere else. And the PTAL for that area, I think is one if we're lucky. And we haven't got the transport to sustain a development like this. And I think it is totally over densification and totally incongruous with the area. And we can't let it go through really, because it's going to cause more problems than it's going to save. Thank you. Sorry, Rob.
Thank you, Mr. Rob. Gia?
Hi, mine's actually a question. I'd like to ask for clarification on the developer's exact infrastructure plans. How many more schools and GP surgeries will you support build to cater for this amount of people? Or your plans do not actually include families? Most units are single units. I had gone round to see, and you had said they were mainly single units. How many of these now proposed extra units be safe family homes? Additionally, what are the specific plans for the slip road in relation to this development, as it's already currently a nightmare and you can barely pass? Thank you.
Thank you. So I'll invite the panel back to answer those questions, please. So the 3 questions I heard, the first, well, actually the 2. The first was around infrastructure, so about increase in schools to cater for an increase in children in the local area. Questions around how health services were managed relating to GP surgeries. And then a question around the number of homes and family homes, and then a question around how it will affect the slip road. Thank you.
Can I kick off then, Chair? I'll address the GP surgeries question first, if that's a... Sorry, guys, can you hear me? You can hear me now. I'll address the GP surgeries question first. It's a good question, and it's one that we asked right at the beginning of this process. That question was asked of the council as well, but the local NHS partners have said that they don't want a new doctor's surgery on site, as was previously approved as part of the Mayor Holmes Permission. What they would like instead is a financial contribution towards improving and expanding existing local facilities. In terms of how that would look, we haven't got to that point yet, but that's the rationale. Likewise, an environmental impact assessment has been submitted, which assesses the potential development impacts on all local infrastructure, whether that be schools, hospitals, nurseries, so on and so forth. With regards to school places, there is currently sufficient capacity with regards to primary age children, but I know there is almost a shortage, or if not at capacity, for older school children in terms of senior schools. Generally, flatted developments like this, they would be targeted at younger families, but that's not to say that that won't happen. And likewise, that's going to be a conversation with the council in terms of whether any contributions would be made towards improving local schools facilities or not. As I said previously, it's still too early in the day on that. We haven't had any conversations really on viability, etc. But yeah, that's where we are on those 2 points. The third question, I believe, was on family housing. Is that right?
Yeah, you take. Yeah, I mean, just one point I was just add on what Josh just said about schools. I think the SIL payments going are roughly about £12.3 million, so there's significant SIL payments that this scheme would generate. In terms of family housing, so probably important to say how we define family housing, because often families do live in 2-bed plus homes, but here where the borough count family housing as 3-bed. So just answering clearly on 3 beds. So if we take the overall development, there's 21% 3 beds in the overall development. There is a mixture between the different tenures, and that's because it's about need. So if you look at the affordable tenures, you'll see there's 34% 3 beds in the affordable tenures. And when you contrast it with the private, it's lower, it's about 17%. And clearly that's led by what we know is the need. So if you look at Hannah's team looking at affordable housing need, there is need for more 3-bed family homes in the affordable housing, particularly in the social rent. That's how we've sought to address it. Clearly, we could increase that number of 3-bed family homes in the private, but to do so, we create a viability problem, and then that would reduce the overall level of affordable housing. So at the end of the day, it's a bit of a trade-off, and we've sought to get the right balance there.
Thank you. And then there was a question around the physical infrastructure around the slip road and how it's going to, the increase in accommodation is going to affect the slip road. When you say the slip road, do you mean Hook Rise South or the slip road Toby Way around the back of the bowling alley? So we're talking about the Transport for London owned road, Hook Rise South. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so Christina picked up on this partially within her presentation. As part of the Mayor Homes Permission, which was obviously implemented, there were several Section 106 contributions with regards to improving Tolworth Roundabout. It was over £2.5 million. With regard to Hook Rise South, I know that TfL have requested that some of those bays have been formalised, so there's some formalised parking there. That's expected to be extended further down the development. The good news in terms of on-street parking stress, in terms of the Mayor Homes Permission, this development will be providing less car parking. So I think there'll be 241 new car parking spaces provided, which I can't remember off the top of my head what that reduction is. But it's not insubstantial. So essentially there'll be less car parking required as a result of this application as there was part of the previous one.
Thank you. I think Councillor Dunstone may pick up on the Hook Rise South question. Absolutely. Yeah, so I'll let you answer that in a minute. Thank you. So I haven't heard any other questions from the floor, so I'm going to go to members now who would like to ask questions, make comments. Councillor Griseldas, Councillor Affey, Councillor Dunstone, and I have some questions, and Councillor Andreas. So start with Councillor Griseldas. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. My question is one of light. Already in one of your own presentations, you could see that one of the blocks was almost the bottom 3 floors were completely in the dark. So by the way the site is structured, how are you going to make sure that the people who live in ground floor flats will get a sufficient amount of daylight hours into their flats?
Yeah, so the daylight sunlight, it's one of the chapters within the environmental impact assessment, so it's obviously a really key consideration in terms of the design. It's something that PRP, as architects, have worked on immediately within the sort of master planning process to ensure that A, existing residents at Signal Park are getting adequate access to daylight and sunlight, B, the new development that comes around also has that, and also impacts on neighbouring properties such as Dean and Drayton Court. So yeah, it's been rigorously tested. In terms of its performance, for a scheme of this nature, it's actually doing very well. The MPPF essentially provides guidance on daylight and sunlight when you're in urban locations, and you need to take a flexible approach. But that being said, it is, the impacts have been minimised. The vast majority of homes, either in the development or around the development, will exceed or meet BRE guidance.
Okay, any follow-up questions?
It does exceed this forum, but if I could see data on how it's performing rather than just take your word for it, that would be very helpful.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Afilaka.
Oh.
Thank you. Thank you for the... Hello. Yeah. Thank you for the presentation. Picking up on the less car parks, what is the parking ratio for the unit? And how will this be managed such that we ensure that there is enough space for residents? My other question is around sustainability. What measure will be put in place to ensure that the phase 2 remains adaptable to future environmental challenges? Thank you.
I'm going to start with this sustainability. Hopefully you can hear me. So I'll start with the sustainability one whilst Josh just gets the parking ratio. This scheme has been designed with sustainability at the forefront of it, and a lot of work's been done around not just daylight and sunlight penetration to homes and to the public realm, but also overheating analysis, because one of the biggest challenges we're facing with modern homes and the level of insulation we're putting into the schemes to make sure that homes require as little energy as possible to run. They're actually getting very hot, and our climate is starting to get warmer, as we're all experiencing in the summers. So the scheme has been designed very carefully to ensure that windows are not too big and therefore getting excessive solar gain on them. And where we've been dealing with a very noisy environment in locations and also polluted in some areas, all homes that require or could require additional cooling have that potential included within the MVHR, so the air source equipment within the home, which recirculates heat and can take heat out of the air. We have designed, as the GLA requires, windows to be openable, so you can choose to purge naturally with your heating, which is why we have openable windows. But you're not required to open the windows for the homes to stay comfortable within their temperatures. So we're balancing two things, overheating and also heat loss, to make sure that homes use as little energy as possible and also reduce fuel poverty and heat poverty and energy poverty within the home. All the materials are designed within the latest sort of guidance around durability. They're non-combustible, so all of the buildings are brick, but they're also very durable, so they will last a long time, because any big building requires a lot of energy to build it, carbon offset, and reducing the carbon footprint of the building. So that's been optimised to make sure they will last as long as possible, and far longer than some schemes we've all seen in the past last. But they will also weather well. So we've got really good drip details on all the window sills to prevent staining. So it will be a really robust and durable scheme, because if we're building it, you want it to last and really get the value out of the carbon and energy we're putting into it. The other element to it is the public realm and landscape for the scheme. So we have a big increase in biodiversity for the site and nature. We have pollution absorbing planting. We have natural drainage, rain gardens, so we're not putting additional water into the system when we do have downpours. And we're trying to maximise the air quality on the site with the type of planting we're using. So we're trying to look at it in as many ways as possible in terms of sustainability and also sustainability of the community. So well-being, all homes have access to private amenity, different types of amenity spaces for different age groups. So we have a sustainable community and elements that support that community. So we've tried to look at it in totality and it's really informed the building form and architecture. So whether people, I know some residents have mentioned they don't like the architecture, but the sustainability has really informed the architecture, the size of window openings, how much glass you can or can't have to make sure the buildings perform in the most sustainable and passive way possible. We also have air source heat pumps for the energy centre, so it's not gas-fired, so we're not using carbon fuels, and we're all electric in terms of building systems, so there's no gas within the buildings. So we're really trying to adopt every possible opportunity to deliver high-quality, high-density housing in a sustainable way. Josh, would you answer?
On the car parking ratio, obviously car parking is generally, it always evokes emotions, doesn't it, in terms of amounts. What we have had to try and do is take a really balanced approach with regard to the local community and their concerns over on-street parking stress, B, the council's local requirements, as well as the GLA, who generally encourage for developments next to stations such as this to be car-free. As I said earlier, there will be less parking provided than that for the Mayor Homes permission, but the parking ratio will be about the parking ratio will be just under 0.25%, sorry. So that will total around 241 new spaces in addition to the 51 already provided within phase 1. 31 of those 241 will be wheelchair accessible. And in addition to the 3 car club bays already provided in phase 1, although only one is used by Zipcar currently, there will be an additional car club bay on top of that. With regards to the surroundings, again, I know there's been questions previously during engagement exercises and discussions with members with respect to uncontrolled parking on Toby Way and Hook Rise South. There will be, or the intention is, after discussions with TfL, that 11 spaces will be allocated as uncontrolled parking available to anyone on Toby Way, along with a further 3 blue badge spaces on Landstone Way, with 2 spaces for commercial and the car club, and then also Hook Rise South, where there are 3 formalised uncontrolled parking bays. There will be a further, I think, 12 of those.
Thank you. How about the parking bays for cycle bays?
Yes. So in terms of cycle bays, it is plentiful, to put it mildly. We have to meet GLA requirements in terms of cycle provision. We're meeting that comfortably. In fact, we're exceeding it. So in terms of the actual numbers, I do not know, but it's 1,700, I'm told.
Thank you, Councillor Aflaka. So we move on to Councillor Dunstone, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for coming on this evening. It's been certainly interesting. I've been involved in the previous planning applications for this site, so I've seen quite a lot all the way through. I do have concerns about Hook Rise South. I think with a PTAL rating of between 0 and 3 for the area, there will be a requirement by residents and new residents for parking. And although you might not have it on site, because it'd be great, there's low parking on site, that parking will hit the streets around it. And that includes Hook Rise South. Now, Hook Rise South has become extremely dangerous. I go up and down there twice a day to get onto the A3, because funnily enough, I don't work in London, which is the only way you can go from the train station, so I have to drive. And I actually live very local to Hook Rise, just off Hook Rise South. The road is very dangerous with the existing new owners of Signal Park.
to the point where my daughter now will travel 6 miles to get around it rather than drive down Hook Rise South, which is 2 minutes from our house. It's not acceptable, it's not right, and you have to do something about it. Now, I don't know if you understand that there is a business area further down the road. They park currently in Hook Rise South. They've been knocked further on. Now they're not only just parking in Hook Rise South, they're now parking on the Crofts area, of which the Crofts were not consulted on. So I don't know where your 2,303 addresses were consulted on, but they certainly weren't consulted on south of the plot, the site. So I feel very strongly about this, that you have to work with TfL to get this right and to make sure it's safe, because there will be a fatality down there. And I'm not joking. I seriously am not. As a plea from a local resident, I'd be really grateful if you do something about the graffiti, as it's already been mentioned. That is increasing antisocial behaviour down there. So my main point, I agree with a lot of what people have already said, so I'm not going to add on to that. But I would seriously consider the highway situation and the parking situation in the local area, because that is having a very detrimental effect on local residents that may not be on Signal Park, but they're having to deal with everything else that's going on. So that's all I'd say. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. Do you want to come? Do you want to come back on that at all?
Yeah, I'll pick up on the parking on Hook Rise South first of all, because again, I completely appreciate your thoughts and concerns with regard to that. The difficulty from the applicant's team side is that obviously is controlled by TfL. What we have done, or we are required to do as part of the Mayor Homes planning application previously, and that will continue moving forward with this application, is to monitor the surrounding streets in terms of on-street parking stress. That then provides an evidence base to councillors and also to TfL as to whether they want to enact a controlled parking zone there. If there was a controlled parking zone, we can make a commitment as a developer with regards to stopping new residents from applying for local parking permits, for instance. But until that road is restricted in terms of who parks there, it's out of our control ultimately, but what we can do is continue to build up the evidence base, which we are doing through the survey work.
Thank you. Did you want to ask any other questions, Councillor Dunstone?
No, I just think actually now is the time to get it sorted. Now is the time that it's extremely dangerous. Now is the time you've got the lorries and you'll have the additional lorries going down there from the site. Now's the time to get it sorted, not when somebody dies.
Just wanted to deal with the graffiti point. I know Councillor Grocott has already brought it up, and so have some residents. It's Guinness's responsibility to sort that out, and we are aware of it, and it is being dealt with. We're intending to remove that graffiti. It's our aim that if this site gets, there's more people moving in, there'll be less antisocial behaviour because there'll be more surveillance there. We have really worked on the landscaping along the A3, so it would be really nice when those boards get removed and you can actually see it properly, and there isn't the opportunity for graffiti to happen, because I know it's happened in the past. We've got rid of it before and we'll have to do that again. But it is on our radar and it is being sorted.
Can we just keep a closer eye on it, because this has been going on for a while and it's been left, and the longer it gets, longer it's left, the more goes on there. So if we can stamp it out earlier, that would be very welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dunstone. And as you said, Hannah, we've already started that conversation, so we'll continue to have that conversation. And I think as part of that, we'd want to know the frequency that you're monitoring and when it's going to be removed. If you can email me, that would be great. Thank you. Okay, so Councillor Andreas Kirsch, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks for the presentation. I'm coming tonight here to hear the questions and comments from residents and from the councillors in the neighbourhood. I have a couple of things. So first of all, I mean, it's nice to see that you're starting from a different point than some others in regards to affordable, but still, you know, it would be lovely to see and appreciate viabilities. But if you can, you know, and it's not the final stage of the planning application, the more you can do, obviously, the more I encourage you to come closer to more affordable. It has already been mentioned, the mix of homes, and again, I see other planning applications which have a much further starting point. So again, the mix on 2 beds and 3 beds, that's more than we see in many planning applications. But again, and I know the viability issues, the plea, you know, the more you can do, as we have a housing need in Kingston, we know we need more 2 and 3 bedroom homes. And again, if you look at it overall, it's many more on the private side, nearly 400 2 beds and against 230 for 1 beds and 134 3 beds. So that's actually, compared with others, an interesting mix. But the more you could do there, again, it's really appreciated because that's where we have our housing need. On the community hall, I have a couple of questions. Again, basic question, is it accessible only for residents on Signal Park, or is it for the wider community? And if so, how does it work in terms of who is managing the hall? What about lettings? How can a community activity sprawl there and happen? And how easy will it be for residents to access it and put up events? So that's, I think, is a crucial bit, which obviously for the wider impact of existing residents in the area might appreciate having the additional space there. As far as I understand, please correct me if I'm wrong, from the presentation you want to do an opening to King George's Field, which again, if that's the case, I really welcome that, to making, you know, the connections to that area and the green spaces we have there. I'm not sure from the presentation, I haven't seen anything, but I would encourage you, as the first block we got in the presentation, the first bigger one, which is facing the A3, and given the history, the Toby Chuck side, and it was where Ziggy Stardust, you know, started and his career and became a world star. If you could do anything to incorporate the history of the site and promote the history of the site, I think that would be very, very welcomed and well received. And I think it's a missed opportunity if you wouldn't. So I really hope you do. I mean, I had a conversation with TfL, and they missed the trick, unfortunately. They all said that's a great idea, but they haven't done it. On the Tolbers Roundabout, there is an episode of Monty Python's Flying Circus, where John Cleese said, I'm here at Tolbers Roundabout, and I was suggesting to them with a solar panel and a display, they could run it on an endless sort of, you know, but they said, nice idea, but they didn't do it. So please, anything you can do on the history of the site would be appreciated. We had the question on the GP provision, and I know how tricky it is, given also how, you know, the NHS is facing severe financial impacts. And I know this is primary provision with GPs, but it's slightly different than the overall NHS package. But, and I saw, you know, heard from your answer on the question from residents, I know how tricky it is, but I would encourage you, and I know they rather want to see money to increase other provisions, as you said, but I would urge you to take up again the opportunity to talk to the primary care providers in Kingston, if there's any appetite, if, you know, you could design some of the rooms there appropriate to someone who would like to take on a GP service. Again, I don't put high hopes in here, knowing how difficult it is, but again, if you could at least try again, being in touch if anybody has an interest to develop a surgery there, you know, you obviously could tailor the fitting out of the site. And last but not least, we had a couple of people mention the traffic, and, you know, I believe Lorraine had already mentioned Hook Rise South, but we had also the thing about the trains and the overall connectivity. We run for more than 2 years now in Kingston, the Council, a large employers forum, which the big employers in our borough, and where we discuss things and see how we, you know, on skills and employment for our residents and opportunities and other things, how we strategically can use the might of the large employers. And when SWR a couple of years ago wanted to reduce the train services to Kingston, we came together, again, the council, university, the college, the big employers, and engaged with TfL, and we could avoid not TfL, SWR could avoid cuts. We know Kingston has transport and connectivity issues.
If you can wrap it up, please.
Yeah, and last point, thanks, Chair. And We have a letter ready, which addresses a lot of transport issues, also increasing the Chessington branch, which obviously serves Tober Station as well, and doing improvements there. All large employers signed up for that letter to the mayor and to TfL. So I invite you, if you would like to add your voice as Guinness and Countryside, making the case we need more better connectivity, buses and trains in Kingston. You're very welcome to sign that letter.
Thank you very much, Andreas Kirsch. So we had a question number 1 about the community space. How is it going to be managed and leased? Question 2, has permission been given to, I can't understand my own writing. KGPF. Yes, thank you. Thank you. Have the opening to King George's playing fields, and how has the permission been given, or is it just a wish? Have you thought about, and are you going to incorporate Ziggy Stardust and the history there at all into the development? We've already mentioned the GP provision, but if there's anything else you can say on that. And I think the other 2 points were around collaboration. So thank you.
I'm going to start with the commercial space. So currently in phase 1, Guinness has provided some community space, and it's not a size at which we need to provide in policy terms for the whole site. So it's very much a kind of temporary situation at the moment. I know we've had some community groups that are interested that have had a look around it, but no one has kind of signed up to use it yet, so it's currently left empty. Through the consultation, we spoke about where we would actually like to see that space, and at some points it was further south in the site, but it was community groups kind of fed back to us that they would prefer to see it on Signal Park Square, where our current marketing suite is. It's got that active facade onto the square where I think people would better use it. Currently, we're in a situation where we obviously have the space that's not being leased at the moment, and the marketing suite, given I think we've only got 4 units left to sell, will be gone very shortly. And there's this in-between time before, if this does get planning permission and gets built out, that will be empty. So we're looking at possibly reconfiguring that space now before that planning permission happens, gets approved, doesn't, to kind of work with community groups to see that brought forward now, hopefully, in some sort of temporary way. If we could bring it forward and have a permanent solution now, so we didn't have to move people in and out, is our kind of best aim. So that's where we're at with that space. It is available. No one's using it currently. We've spoken to various different community groups about it. I don't think it's of a large enough size for some of the community groups we've spoken to, and we're hoping to kind of have a fix of that so we can then speak to community groups about using that space and get it sorted before the next phase even gets sort of built out. So that's where we're at with that.
Okay, question 2 about King George's playing fields. Has permission been given to show the walkway, or is that just a wish at this stage?
So that is an ongoing conversation with the council. We imagine that as part of the planning application, when the Section 106 gets signed, there'll be a requirement that there is an element of funding towards improving that pathway. What we've tried to do so far is provide some illustrative ideas in terms of how that could be improved. So you're improving that sort of connectivity between the site and what are wonderful amenity outdoor areas at King George's Fields and Tolworth Court Farm, and really trying to promote that route. But in terms of the actual detail, that's not been decided yet, but it's something that we look forward to working with the council and the community in terms of how that could look.
Thank you. And Ziggy Stardust and the history and how that can be incorporated?
We'd be delighted to, and certainly I would as a fan. We've tried to do this on a different scheme in Brixton previously, which was opposite where David Bowie was born, and the David Bowie Foundation didn't want to have anything to do with it. So there's a little bit of naming rights that we have to be careful with, but we'd be very happy to approach them and incorporate something that maybe doesn't contravene any kind of naming protection, but it would be fantastic to celebrate it. There's opportunities within any planning conditions around public art as well, that we can use public art as part of a way of celebrating that history. Obviously, it wasn't only David Bowie that played at the pub. There's a lot of famous artists started there, so there's maybe something around the whole history of the previous venue and all the artists that went there might be slightly more collaborative, and also not forget about some of the other artists.
Thank you. And then is there anything more you want to say about GP provision? I know from our conversations and from the work that we've been doing as councillors behind the scene, just to add to what you said already, we have approached NHSE, we have asked our public health director to talk to NHSE, and as you've said, the case, the space that's there was, we asked NHSE if that needed to be changed to meet anyone's needs, and the answer came back and has come back very strongly that, as you've said, the direction of travel is not that NHSE wants to put a new GP surgery in there. They want the money to expand existing surgeries. So as local councillors, we are still in conversation, but is there anything you want to add in terms of your responsibilities as developers?
No, just that, obviously, as I said previously, we engaged with the council on that very early doors. So obviously some time's passed since those initial conversations and the application getting submitted, a sort of 18-month period. The NHS, the local NHS partners have responded to the application submission within the last sort of 3-4 weeks, and they've reconfirmed that position, which is they would like a financial contribution towards improving local facilities.
Thank you. Toby, is there anything you wanted to add to that from the council planning point of view, specifically around GP and infrastructure? Is there anything you want to add to that?
No, there's nothing to add to that at this stage. I think we have had the response from the NHS, so we'll look at that. Okay, Councillor Afilaka.
Yes, just going back to the issue of parking, is there a possibility of having the total number of parking space that we would have based on the information that you've given us, so that we know what we're fighting, the challenge that we have?
Sorry, the total number of spaces that will be provided?
For parking.
For parking, so for dedicated car parking spaces for the residential blocks, it will be 241 new spaces. As against, based on the illustrative scheme, 965 homes.
Okay, any other comments or questions from any members?
Sorry. Just to support what Councillor Dunstan has said, this is unacceptable. 965 as against 241. Thank you.
As I picked up previously, it's been a really difficult one for us to balance. We have to, recognise the Mayor's transport strategy in terms of pushing for car-free development. That was something that had been mentioned earlier in the process, but we said no, there needs to be a certain level of car parking here. And likewise, you know, I recognise the PTEL rating isn't fantastic on the site, so people will assume that people will need cars. But it is next door to a transport node, i.e. the station, and I'm not saying that will pick up everything, but in terms of the Mayor's feedback, this has to be referred to them. They are a consultee. The balance of parking in the round, we think, it's never going to please everyone, essentially. But we've worked and tried our best to make sure that amount of parking is provided.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments from members? Councillor Ansari.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. It's really good. But what's not so good is what's happening at the moment, and I fully back up my colleagues in this, that the traffic is absolutely awful right south, and we just don't want accidents happening or fatalities, so please sort that out first before going forward. I think that's just my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ansari. I'm aware that we've got a number of items where members of the public have come to speak, so I'm going to ask committee members to agree that we swap things around a bit. Yes, sorry, I have to finish this item first. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Okay. So, Toby, would you please like to sum up before we move on?
Yeah, okay, thank you. Hopefully I haven't missed anything, but I've been taking notes. Mel's been taking notes. We'll collaborate all of those. So I guess the first one was in terms of objection on noise grounds, unless they can be satisfied that the residential properties won't be affected by the concrete batching works, etc. And then I think other ones were things like too much development for Tolworth, too high, lack of public transport to support high density, cramped living, lack of sunlight, lack of privacy, insufficient parking, lack of affordable housing and traffic. Concern about this already being out of keeping with the area, and concern about building tower blocks, whether there's sufficient electricity, and then things in terms of infrastructure, GPs, schools. Hook Rise South, clearly there's concerns about traffic and parking and safety there, and whether the overall parking is sufficient and how the parking in the area will be managed. There was concern about graffiti as a current issue and some antisocial behaviour. And then whether more affordable housing, 3- and 2-bedroom units can be provided, how the community space will be managed, and whether existing residents can use that. Welcome the improved access to King George's Park. And whether some history of the site can be incorporated into the proposal.
And I think there was a question specifically for the developers to answer to Councillor Griselda's Kirsch around the evidence for daylight that they were going to provide.
Yeah, okay, yeah. I think that's broadly what I had. I don't know if anyone thinks I've missed anything obvious other than that.
We'll have a look and check, but I think they were all the main points. So thank you very much. Thank you everybody for your comments and for your questions. We will make sure that these things are recorded and passed on. So as I was saying, I'm aware that there are a number of people that are